It was supposed to be the most futuristic city ever built. A mirrored city, 170 kilometers long, standing 500 meters tall, cutting in a perfectly straight line across the Saudi desert. No cars, no roads, no pollution. A home for 9 million people, living inside 2 enormous glass walls. When Saudi Arabia first revealed it, the entire world stopped and stared. Some people called it a glimpse of the future, others called it impossible. And now, in 2026, we finally have an answer to the question everyone has been asking. What is really happening to the line? Because the truth, it turns out, is very different from the promise. In this video, we're going to break down exactly what the line was meant to be, why the dream started falling apart, and what Saudi Arabia is quietly building instead. By the end, you'll understand the real story behind the most talked about megaproject on Earth. But before we begin, please take a quick moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the biggest builds on the planet. It genuinely helps us out. Now, let's get into it. To understand how big this fall is, you first have to understand just how big the dream was. The line is the centerpiece of Neom, a $500 billion plan to build a brand new region in the empty northwest corner of Saudi Arabia. And when Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman unveiled the design back in 2021, it broke the internet. Picture 2 mirrored skyscrapers running side by side in a single straight line for 170 kilometers. That is longer than some entire countries. Each wall would stand 500 meters tall, taller than the Empire State Building, and the two would sit just 200 meters apart. Inside that narrow glass canyon, everything you could ever need would be stacked vertically. Homes, schools, offices, parks, even rivers and gardens. You would never need a car. A high-speed train would carry you from one end to the other in around 20 minutes. It would run on 100% renewable energy with 0 carbon emissions. And it would eventually house 9 million people. It was bold, it was beautiful, and on paper, it looked like science fiction made real. The promotional videos racked up hundreds of millions of views. For a while, the line wasn't just a building project, it was a symbol of a country trying to reinvent its entire future beyond oil. But here is where the story turns. Because a vision that stunning, at that scale, runs straight into a very hard wall. Reality. The first cracks appeared in the engineering. Think about what was actually being asked. Build 2 perfectly straight, 500-meter tall structures across 170 kilometers of open desert, including mountains, sand dunes, and difficult ground. No one had ever built anything like it. The clever solutions that might work for a short test section did not simply scale up to a structure longer than the English Channel is wide. Experts began to quietly admit a difficult truth. There were not even enough construction companies on the entire planet to build something this big, this fast. And then came the money. This is where the dream really started to unravel. In 2024, reports revealed the first major retreat. Instead of building a large stretch by 2030, Saudi Arabia now expected to complete just 2.4 kilometers of the line by the end of the decade. To put that in perspective, that is less than 2% of the original 170-kilometer plan. At the same time, the population target was quietly slashed, from 1.5 million people down to around 300,000. Then, in 2025, a leaked internal audit landed like a bombshell. According to the report, finishing the line to its original design would cost an almost unimaginable $8.8 trillion. And it would not be complete until the year 2080. For comparison, the entire original Neom budget was $500 billion. The real number was potentially more than 10 times higher, stretching half a century into the future. The reaction was swift. In August 2025, Saudi Arabia's giant sovereign wealth fund, the PIF, wrote down $8 billion connected to the project. A quiet admission that a huge amount of money was simply not coming back. And then came the moment that made it undeniable. In September 2025, construction on the line was suspended. The workforce was cut by roughly a third. More than 1,000 employees were moved off the remote desert site and relocated hundreds of kilometers away to the capital, Riyadh. Job listings tied to the project collapsed by around 75% in a single year. For months, officials insisted the line remained a strategic priority, but the signs kept pointing one way, and in May 2026, it became official. Reports confirmed that Neom had halted further work on the line until at least after 2030. The plans for the tourist coast along the Red Sea were pushed back indefinitely. And the famous twin-mirrored skyscrapers? They are now set to be significantly redesigned into something far simpler and far cheaper, if and when work ever restarts. Perhaps the most telling number of all is the population. The dream began with 9 million residents. It was cut to 1.5 million by 2030, then to 300,000, and by 2026, the target for the end of the decade had fallen all the way down to just 100,000 people. From a city for millions to a town. That single set of numbers tells you almost everything about what happened here. So why did it fail so badly? It wasn't one single thing. It was several, all hitting at once. The engineering was beyond anything ever attempted. The costs spiraled out of control. Oil prices, the source of so much of the funding, didn't cooperate. And critically, the foreign private investment that was supposed to pour in never really showed up. The plan had counted on outside investors to carry a huge share of the cost. When they hesitated, the PIF was left as the main financier, carrying nearly all of it alone. On top of that, Saudi Arabia was trying to build many giant projects at the exact same time, which created a worldwide shortage of the workers, machines, and materials it all needed. The price of everything went up, the timeline stretched out, and eventually, something had to give. But here's the part most headlines miss. Neom is not being abandoned, it is being repositioned. The grand, glittering city of the future has been put on hold. But quietly, in its place, Saudi Arabia is doubling down on the parts that actually make money. The new priority is a place called Oxagon, a port and industrial city on the Red Sea coast. Instead of mirrored apartments for millions, the focus there is on practical things: shipping, manufacturing, and increasingly, artificial intelligence data centers. Some of the infrastructure already built for the line may even be repurposed to support them. There's also Neom's green hydrogen plant, one of the most advanced clean energy projects in the world, reportedly around 80% complete. And Cinderella, a luxury island resort, reportedly close to finished. These are the pieces of Neom that survived, because they have a clearer path to actually paying for themselves. So what does all of this really mean? It means the line, as it was first imagined, is effectively on pause, and may never be built the way those famous videos promised. The mirrored megacity stretching to the horizon has, for now, become a much smaller, much quieter story. A short stretch of foundations in the desert, waiting to see if the world ever returns to it. And maybe that's not entirely a failure. Some would argue that knowing when to scale back an impossible dream, instead of pouring hundreds of billions more into it, is actually a sign of discipline, not defeat. Saudi Arabia still has enormous ambitions and enormous wealth behind them. The country is simply shifting that money toward projects that can deliver results sooner. Stadiums, resorts, industry, energy. The future it's chasing now just looks a lot more ordinary and a lot more achievable than two glass walls stretching across the desert.
The line was a bet that you could reinvent the very idea of a city overnight. It was breathtaking, it was historic, and in the end, it ran headfirst into the limits of money, engineering, and time. The dream isn't officially dead, but for now, it's been folded away, waiting for a day that may never come. So here's my question for you. Was the line always an impossible fantasy, destined to fall apart? Or is this just a pause, and a smarter version will rise from the desert one day? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for
for more deep dives into the projects shaping our world. Until next time, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.